Hello and welcome to Pleasure Reading. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and this is a podcast about the pleasure of reading, where I share curated reading lists, author rankings, chats with my bookish friends, and more. If you too take pleasure in reading, I hope that you will subscribe and share this show with a friend. Cheers to your next best book. Hello and welcome to Pleasure Reading, a podcast about the many pleasures of reading, where I, your host, Amelia Ruby, share curated book lists and occasional chats with my bookish friends. Today, I am arriving to wish you a very happy, almost spring. I live in the Midwest in the US, and we have just had a few beautifully balmy days. The sun is out. I'm preparing my seeds for spring planting, and I just couldn't help but create this episode all about books for frugal gardeners. Now, why frugal gardeners, you might ask? Well, I've been experimenting with planting in raised beds in my backyard for a few years now. And throughout that process, I've been struck by how much money it can cost to have a garden, or at least how much money these big box stores want you to spend to have a garden. They'll sell you expensive beds, fancy dirt, all these fertilizers. There are so many things that you can buy or get pushed to buy when you're starting a garden. And I feel like it just shouldn't be that way, you know? So over the past year, I have been doing some research and looking for books on how to garden inexpensively, how to garden on a budget, how to garden thriftfully or frugally even. And so in this episode, I'm going to share my 4 favorite books that I've found with you that are helping me continue to tend and grow my garden without spending so much money every season when I want to plant, grow, or harvest. So in this episode, I'm going to share 4 books for frugal gardeners or aspiring frugal gardeners, and I'm sure share anecdotes of my own gardening journey along the way. Let's get into it, shall we? The first book on my list of reads for frugal gardeners is called Home Sweet Homegrown: How to Grow, Make, and Store Food No Matter Where You Live by Robin Jasko. If you were only going to buy one book from this list, I would definitely recommend it be this one. And that's largely because it packs so much information into a tiny little paperback. Home Sweet Homegrown was published by Microcosm, which is one of my very favorite independent publishers. They're based out in Portland, Oregon, and they publish so many zines and punk and radical paperbacks. I'm a big fan of everything that they do, and this book is no exception. So in Home Sweet Homegrown, the author walks us through a bit about why to grow your own food, an extensive section on how to start doing that, guides to grow 25 different vegetables, ideas for how to do different types of gardening, whether that be in-ground, raised bed, container. They also walk us through how to make a garden plan and many DIY options for things like starting seeds, putting together a rain barrel, building a composter, and how to make organic plant sprays so that bugs and weeds don't bother your garden as much. In addition to all the gardening parts of this book, there are also sections with recipes for some of the vegetables you might grow, and there is a brief section on how to store food, how to do infusions and canning and pickling, and actually use everything that your garden grows every year. Because let me tell you, I grow tomatoes every year, and at the end of the season, I always just have tons, buckets of them left from my 6 tomato plants that I've grown. And I can admit that the first year, I just got rid of a bunch of them. I put them in my yard waste bin and I sent them off to be composted because I didn't know any better. I was like, what am I going to do with 100 green tomatoes? And now I have learned more about pickling the green tomatoes and also how to let them ripen in my basement so I can use them for soups and sauces throughout the winter. But I learned all of that from books like this. So this is my first rec for frugal gardeners out there. It's Home Sweet Homegrown by Robin Jasko. You can pick it up at the link in the show notes or directly from Microcosm. It's also very affordable. When I was looking, it's $10 for this book. It's a great addition to your gardening library. The second book on my list is one that I just picked up at Barnes& Noble last week. I was looking at some recommended spring books, saw this one, and was like, oh, I think I need to own and read more of this. So this book is called Grow Your Groceries: 40 Hacks for Growing Plants from Supermarket Foods by Simon Ackroyd. Now, the cover of this book tells me that Simon Ackroyd has 1.5 million followers on TikTok and Instagram, which is wild. I don't use social media, so I don't know about that. But what I like about this book is it shows you how to grow food from the produce that you buy in the grocery store. So it starts with the simplest one that I have already done before, which is green onions. All you have to do to grow green onions from the grocery store is to leave the whites and the roots, put them in some dirt and water them a little bit, and they will grow. I regrew green onions in my windows in my Chicago apartments for years. So that one I was familiar with, but there are so many in here that I'm not. She talks about how to grow lettuce from lettuce at the grocery store, how to do tomatoes, avocado, celery, potatoes, sweet potatoes, like so many amazing vegetables. But there's also a section on roots and herbs, how to grow mint from cuttings, how to get your garlic to grow from a clove that you get at the grocery store. There's also a section on fruit and one on dry goods. So how to grow chamomile from tea bags or lentils from the dried ones that you buy at the grocery store. So I haven't experimented with all of the hacks in here. And honestly, I'm sure some of them aren't quite as easy as suggested, or like just because I might be able to get a plant to germinate doesn't mean I will actually grow it. Like there's a one in here on lychee, and even he says that he has been growing this one lychee plant for 2 years and it's only 6 inches tall. And so he probably won't see fruit for years to come. But still, what I love about this book is it invites us to grow with the things we're already buying and eating. Instead of just throwing away the roots of a vegetable or tossing the last couple lentils in the bag, we can use them to grow more food. We often think about growing plants, but food itself can be a regenerative resource. And that's what I really learned and loved about Grow Your Groceries by Simon Ackroyd. Up next is the book that probably the title is the most on theme for this episode. It's Grow Food for Free: The Sustainable, Zero-Cost, Low-Effort Way to a Bountiful Harvest by Hugh Richards. Now, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his first name. It's spelled Huw Richards. This book is so great if you want to start a garden and you don't have much money to spend. He talks through so many different ways that he gets gardening essentials, like how he builds beds without having to buy lumber, how he finds dirt and compost and mulch. So much of this book is also just about how to talk to other people, how to ask for what you need, how to offer things from your garden as well, how to be in relationship. That's something I really loved about this book, is that he talks about how to do a seed swap, how to do a plant swap. Like it's really embedded in community, which I think is a really nice reminder when a lot of gardening here in the US, where I live, like happens in backyards. It happens behind fences. I know that in more urban areas or other countries, there are a lot of community gardens and spaces where this is happening. But I really appreciated the way this book invites us to lean into community in starting our garden. He's got a lot of great advice for how to get set up and what to grow. And then another section on storing and how to get seeds from your plants, because that's how plants become regenerative over time, right? Is that we like take the seeds, we do our little crop rotation, we replant. I also like in this book that he has a section on how to sell your plants, such that you could, make some money from your garden that you could reinvest in your garden. Your garden can be its own sort of circular economy. And in the back of the book, there's a really sweet little growing journal from a whole year in Hugh's garden. So again, that is Grow Food for Free by Hugh Richards. Highly recommend it for anyone who wants just like a beautifully photographed start to finish guide from I have nothing to now I have a thriving garden. You want to do it without spending a lot of money, except maybe whatever it costs to buy this book. And finally, the last book I wanted to recommend just came out this spring. I spotted it at my local library, loved it, bought my own copy so I could reference it. And it is called The Preserver's Garden: How to Grow a Garden for Fermenting, Canning, Pickling, Dehydrating, Freeze-Drying, and More by Stacy and Jeremy Hill of Gooseberry Bridge Farm. So, this book is perhaps a little less about gardening and more focused on plants that you can grow to store in a pantry. And it really gets into all of these processes mentioned in the subtitle: fermenting, canning, pickling, dehydrating, freeze drying. Starting with like, what plants can we do this with well, and then walking through, here's the best way that we've found to store it. And the authors of this book live on a homestead farm. They grow all their own food. So they're really like living out what they talk about. I also just really appreciated the emphasis on food storage here and the longevity of a garden and the food that you grow. I think that this is something like for frugal gardeners, as this episode promises, part of having a garden that isn't just costing you a lot of money is being very efficient and effective with what you grow and how you store it, right? You don't want to be me just getting rid of all the green tomatoes at the end of the season. You want to have ways. You don't want to also be me last year, just letting this huge thing of herbs kind of go to waste and then eventually freeze and die in my raised bed because I didn't harvest it and I didn't know how to store it. And I didn't quite know what to do with it. So food storage is the way that we get even more out of our summer and fall gardens. And this book was really helpful for thinking through that and different at-home food preservation techniques. And that's our list, my friends. 4 books for frugal gardeners, folks who want to grow some food at home, inside in containers or in your backyard, and don't want to spend a ton of money getting that set up and seeing it through. So just to do a quick recap, the books that I recommended in this episode were Home Sweet, Homegrown: How to Grow, Make, and Store Food No Matter Where You Live by Robin Jasko. Then Grow Your Groceries: 40 Hacks for Growing Plants from Supermarket Foods by Simon Ackroyd. Then Grow Food for Free: The Sustainable, Zero-Cost, Low-Effort Way to a Bountiful Harvest by Hugh Richards. And finally, The Preserver's Garden: How to Grow a Garden for Fermenting, Canning, Pickling, Dehydrating, Freeze-Drying, and More by Stacy and Jeremy Hill. Those are the books that currently make up my gardening library, and I think one or more of them could be a great addition to yours. I would love to hear about how your gardens grow this spring and summer. You can find a link in the show notes to reach out to me if you like. I hope that these books can be your trusty companions throughout the growing season. And thank you so much for tuning into this show. I'm so grateful that you're a listener of Pleasure Reading. As always, all the books I mentioned are linked in the show notes, and if you purchase through those links, I will receive a small affiliate payment, which I take as thanks for the book rec. I'll be back soon with more bookish episodes. Up next, we actually have a conversation with a dear friend of mine who runs a podcast called Between Drinks. Until then, here's to your next best book.